Good morning, everyone. Give me a thumbs up or a wave in the window if you can hear me okay. Excellent. Thanks, Kim. I can see you and I saw your wave. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Teppenhart. I am the Senior Vice President for Strategic Initiatives of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. And I lead with support from our board and our staff. The state chambers work to build a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable business community here in New Jersey. Today's discussion is co-hosted by both the New Jersey State Chamber and the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. And the topic of board diversity is a priority for both of our chambers. I'm going to admit more folks into the room while I'm talking. But we felt compelled to expand the conversation to more than the topics that exist in corporate boardrooms, and wanted to identify opportunities to give our members a seat at all types of leadership tables. And so that's what brings us to our discussion here today. We will be spending some time with Sam Parker, who is Governor Murphy's Director of Appointments, and I'll be introducing her in a minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Ferlanda Nixon, with the African American Chamber of Commerce. Ferlanda.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. And as Patricia said, I am Ferlanda Fox-Nixon, and I am the Chief of Policy and Government Affairs of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Chamber's founder, president, and CEO, John Harmon. As many of you know, the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey is dedicated to economically empowering and sustaining Black communities and businesses through entrepreneurship and capitalistic initiatives throughout the state of New Jersey. Many of our goals, among our many goals, we seek to enhance our ability to be a critical source of information, inspiration, knowledge, and resources for the more than 80,000 Black-owned businesses and more than 1.2 million Black residents throughout New Jersey. Today's webinar allows us to do just that, and sharing information on how to diversify viewpoints in multiple spheres of influence throughout our state government. So we are delighted to co-host this webinar with the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. And we hope that you find the information shared here today valuable. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ferlanda, and thank you to all of our colleagues at the African American Chamber who engage in this strategic partnership with us. It's a joy to share values and vision with such a group of colleagues and friends, and we are delighted that we have so many people joining us today for this important discussion. Without taking up too much more time, I'm going to introduce Sam Parker. Just a note also, though, we will be recording. We actually are recording today's session. If you have questions as we go through our conversation, it would probably be best to enter them into the chat box. Sam will go through some sort of parameters for today's discussion. But if you have particular questions around a specific type of board or commission that you're interested in, we won't be handling them on today's discussion. Sam will be available as a resource after we discuss sort of the overall processes today. But if you have questions about process or procedures, you can enter them into the chat box and we'll try our best to cover them before we end our time together. So Sam Parker is an organizational development and political professional with extensive expertise in strategic planning, leadership management, strategic engagement, and collaborative partnership building. Sam is currently the Director of Appointments for Governor Murphy. And before joining the administration in March of 2021, she served as the Development and Political Affairs as the Director of Development and Political Affairs for the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. We really pick those short names, Sam. We have this common history of very long names of the places we work that need to be shrunken into acronyms. She's also worked on congressional and partisan political campaigns for organizations such as the National LGBTQ Task Force, the Human Rights Campaign, Equity Maine, and Equality North Carolina on LGBTQ+ issues and all over the country. She holds a master's degree in public policy and management and a certificate of social justice and economics from the Muskie School at the University of Southern Maine. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my dear friend and colleague, Sam Parker.
That was such a great introduction. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How lucky are all of you to have such giants as Patricia and Fernanda as your spokesfolks, right? Your spokeswomen for the incredible work that you do. I'm so excited to be here with you today. As Patricia mentioned, I am the director of appointments for Governor Murphy. And, you know, one of the, when I took this position a couple of months ago, I started in March. So we're at 8 months in this role. One of the things I really wanted to make sure was that there was a lot of transparency. I think I have a reputation in the state in all of the work that I've done as being somebody who is transparent and direct. And so I wanted to make sure that this department echoed those same sentiments. So I am a lifelong New Jerseyan. I grew up in Bergen County. I currently live in Monmouth County with my daughter and our dog, who is 9 years old and a blockhead, but I love her very, very much. And I give you that information because I always think it's really important that we remember that we are all humans in this work, right? I think sometimes politics, especially when you're coming from, obviously I work for the administration, becomes very divisive, right? And it's Republicans versus Democrats. And in this department, it is not that whatsoever. What's really lovely is that we have to work together because a lot of the boards require, they have party affiliation requirements where you can't have more than 3 of one party on a board. So this is really one of those times where I get to collaborate with everybody and, you know, be strategic about where we are moving our boards. I think it goes without saying that this administration really wants to make sure that our diversity and gender equity of our boards match the incredible diversity and equity of our state. And I also think when we're talking about diversity, I do want to be clear, we're not just talking about race and ethnicity. We are talking about gender identity, sexual orientation, military service, disabilities. We really want to make sure that all voices are heard. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, mainly because I think that there are a lot of sound bites out there. You know, stop me if you haven't heard, but you know that one, you have to know somebody who knows somebody to get on a board or commission, or there's a lot of political nepotism, or they're only just appointing people they know. And that's not quite true. There is a part of this that involves civic engagement, but I really look forward to sharing with you what the process is because I love it. So we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna start with the beginning process, no matter what it is, which is everything starts with a resume. So actually, I'm gonna backtrack for a second. What I would recommend is if you are interested in a board and commission, we have a website that you can go to where it's on nj.gov. And if you go to, there's an appointments website, you can look at all of the appointments that are available. Now, there's a slight caveat there. And the slight caveat, because we're all friends here, that I'll tell you is, we have an antiquated software system, and the antiquated software system basically translates to our website. There are over 1,100 boards and commissions that are currently active in the state of New Jersey, and sometimes our information isn't quite the best. Now, we do the best that we can. This is not an administration, and this isn't knocking a previous administration, but I think anyone who works with data knows trash in is trash out. And if you don't update said software, then the website doesn't get updated. And it's no surprise to anyone that there have been a lot of appointments directors in this role, not just in this administration, but in previous administrations. And so sometimes that information just gets lost. Again, not a knock on any administration previous to this one. Human error. It happens. So the reason I bring this up is because if you are interested in a board and commission and you don't see that there is a vacancy, please don't hesitate to reach out, and please don't hesitate to indicate when we get to the application part that is a board that you are interested in. Because sometimes, people resign without telling us, or unfortunately pass away, and we don't find out until much later. So sometimes we do have a vacancy. We just have to know to inquire, which I will do on behalf of anybody who applies. So that's the first step. So go look at our website, see what boards interest you. Second, everything, again, as I said, starts with a resume. So we have a specific website that I'm going to give to you to, not website, excuse me, an email address that I'm going to give to you today, and it's appointments@nj.gov. Patricia, if you don't mind throwing that in the chat box, again, it's appointments@nj.gov. You can submit your resume straight to that inbox. Once you do so, you're going to get a response from one of my colleagues that are going to send you a questionnaire. Now, that questionnaire is going to ask you a lot of information, mainly because we want to get to know you. We want to know who's applying. Some of the information, I'm going to be straight honest with you, there is some asks for financial disclosure, mainly because some of the boards do have a financial disclosure options, but I do want to be clear that I understand that, especially in finances and our own personal finances, we don't like talking about that all the time. I think ancestrally, there can be also feelings of shame or judgment when it comes to discussing our finances. There is nothing you could say, really, unless you embezzled millions of dollars, that would preclude you from an appointment due to your finances. We just want to get to know you better. And also, when we appoint somebody, it's obviously a reflection of the administration. So the more honest that you can be, the better. I actually recommend honesty is the best policy always. So you're going to fill out some financial information. You're going to give us some information about where you live. And also at the end, you're going to see a self-identification section. Everything is, you are not required. But again, as we work to increase our diversity and equity, this information helps us know who's applying. And as we move through the process, who we're appointing, so that we can keep measurement of those numbers, right? I am somebody who likes tangible and numbers. That I'm a data wonk, so I really love knowing that information. So you filling it out completely helps me. So thank you in advance. So once you fill out the questionnaire, you'll send it back. After that point, we do a vetting. Now, the vetting is not through the state police, it's a departmental vetting, and you either come back qualified or not qualified. Now, reasons for not qualified, I really want to be specific. You can be spicy when it comes to the governor, but you cannot call him names. And if you are publicly in a news article slamming the administration inappropriately, or calling the governor names inappropriately, more than likely we're not going to look so kindly upon that, right? I think that's fair. But for the most part, for the most part, everybody, we haven't had many issues with vet. Also, I think it's really imperative to know I will know the reasons for why the vet was not qualified. We do not share that information publicly. If you are applying to this position, we are so grateful that folks are interested in applying. However, we're not interested in ruining anybody's career, anybody's profession, anyone's livelihood. So it'll come back qualified or not qualified. And that's it. It doesn't go anywhere from there. Somebody could ask me and I really just say, our backgrounds are confidential and, they just came back unqualified or not qualified. So, okay, now we get to the fun part. There are two types of appointments, either direct or advice and consent. We're going to go through direct first, mainly because it's the easiest, and then we'll tackle advice and consent. So direct. If it is a direct appointment, which will be indicated on our website, once we do the vetting and once I work with senior staff just to bring your name up to them, Gov approves, we will send in a nomination and for your candidacy to the Secretary of State. We file it and ta-da, you are appointed to the board and commission. You will get an appointment letter. You will get an oath of office mailed to your home address. You will sign the oath of office and notarize it, and then you'll return that back to the Secretary of State. You'll hold on to your appointment letter. It's signed by Governor Murphy. Some people frame them, some people throw it in a desk somewhere, but you are then appointed. What we do on our end is we take a digital version of your appointment letter and we send it over to the commissioner board that we have appointed you to so that they can onboard you. And from that point, my job is done. I'm not involved. Anything that comes up goes straight to the board or commission. Excuse me. So those are direct appointments. Now, advice and consent. So the advice and consent process is a little bit different and a little bit challenging. So we're going to start at the beginning. Again, resume, questionnaire, vetting. Once everything comes back, we then take a look at your county, because for advice and consent, it is at the advice and consent of our Senate. So this is where those sound bites of needing to know somebody or political nepotism or any of that come into play, because you do need to ask for the consent of your home senator. So I live in Monmouth County. So where I live, if I were going to be appointed to an advice and consent board, I would have to give Senator Gopal a call and Senator Scanlon a call. And I would call them and say, I've been nominated for this position on this board. I would love to discuss with you further my resume and qualifications so that you would consider signing off on my nomination. I'm happy to meet with you at any time. Now, here's the kicker. Your senator can absolutely choose to not sign off on you. Unfortunately, we don't have a say in that. Once we nominate you, it's really up to your senator to decide. And that's where a lot of times it does become challenging. I do also want to say that there's this really great piece of this that I think people miss. One, this is a check and balance, right? This is a part of our state constitution, and it makes sure that neither branch of our government is too strong, and that nominations go forward with conversation and debate and all of those wonderful things that make our state strong. So I always like to say there's a piece of civic engagement here. If you don't have a relationship with your home senators, now is the time to build it, right? Reach out to them, let them know that you're interested, meet with them, talk with them. Even before we nominate you, try to build that relationship. If anything, you should, I always say, as somebody who just loves government, these are folks that are advocating on your behalf. Get to know them, right? Beyond your own appointment, get to know what they're doing in your county. So there is a bit of civic engagement there. You'll reach out and then they will decide. So that can be one challenging component, in that sometimes that will hold up a nomination, and that we don't, the candidate will not get courtesy. But let's say that folks, you do get courtesy. One other hiccup can sometimes be, we like to move things in packages. So for instance, if I was being appointed to the social work examiners, right, and we had 4 other candidates, we would wait until all 4 of those candidates were ready for nomination so that we could do them at once in a package. We don't like really doing things piecemeal, because we want boards to be ready to tackle the issues that they're facing with a full board, so that they can meet quorum and bring new people on all at one time. So although I am very quick, if I got I submitted my resume, I got the questionnaire right back, I submitted it in, there's possibility that somebody in that package, maybe they have life stuff going on with the pandemic, maybe they're a single mom taking care of their kids, maybe they're homeschooling, they've got some stuff going on, maybe they're a primary caretaker, might take them a little bit of time to get it in. So my nomination isn't going to move until everybody is ready. There are also times, we see this in our judicial packages all the time, where sometimes somebody, we're almost there and somebody doesn't pass through that last hurdle and comes back non-qualified, and then we have to start the process all over. So in appointments, I think we hear a lot of times that it is timely, and some people start their process, and there was somebody who started their process in 2019 and we just were able to get them appointed in the package. So it can be timely. I'm doing the best I can to make sure it's not as timely. I have an incredible team here of 4 other colleagues. They work with the vetting. Also, I think it's timely to bring up the fact that we are still in a pandemic. right? And I think that there was a backlog when I started in the administration. We had a backlog of vets that we needed to get through, and now we're really starting to really get a handle on that. We also get hundreds of applications every day. So I bring this up to also mention, when you apply, you send in your resume, we send back the questionnaire, you may not hear from us. And mainly that's because we just don't have the bandwidth or capacity to respond to every single person who applies. And it is not an indication of the caliber of your experience. We just may not have a place for you just yet, but that doesn't mean you're not in the queue. So you'll hear from us when we are ready. And if we are able to move a nomination or a candidacy forward. So back to the advice and consent process, just to bring us all to the same place. You've submitted your resume, you filled out that questionnaire, your vet has come back qualified, and we have a package together and we are ready to nominate you. So what we do is we nominate you. Right? You'll then get a letter from me saying you've been nominated. Here are the senators that you should reach out to. So now this is where your part of the process comes in. You're going to reach out to your home senators, just as I mentioned, and you're going to ask for their courtesy. We'll also recommend that you reach out to the Senate Judiciary Chairman. Now, currently that chairman is Senator Scutari. In the next term, starting mid-January, end of January, that chairman will be Senator Stack, as Senator Scutari is going to be the Senate president. You'll reach out to the Judiciary Chairman, and you will have the exact conversation that you're having with your home senators once you've received their courtesy. You'll say, I've received courtesy from my home senators. I'd love to talk to you about my nomination and also talk to you about the qualifications that I bring to this role. He may or may not meet with you. That's okay. But having that outreach is really important. And you may consider reaching out to other senators if you have a relationship, or if not, just to say, you know, I've received courtesy. I hope you'll bring forward my nomination, because it is the Senate Judiciary Chairman and the Senate President that work together to bring nominations forward, and they typically, again, do that as a package. You'll then get called, depending on what type of appointment it is. Some are interviewable and some are not. If it is an interviewable position that we are appointing you to, you'll come before the Senate Judiciary Committee and you will testify. Now, before anybody gets very freaked out or nervous about that, what it is, it's you sit in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it's typically about 3 minutes. You are going to thank your home county senators for their courtesy. You're going to thank the chairman. You're going to thank anybody else that got you to this point, and then you're going to very briefly explain why you are qualified for the position. Once that happens, the senators in the Senate Judiciary might have questions for you. Typically, they won't, or they might want to, if they have a personal relationship with you, want to put something on the public record supporting your nomination. Then the Senate Judiciary Chairman will call for a vote. Once your name is released from the committee, it will move over to the Senate, where the Senate President will call it up for a vote, and then you will be confirmed by the full Senate, and ta-da, you are then appointed. So that is the appointment process. It is a bit it can be challenging, right? I again, transparent and direct, it can be challenging. I think that it's a great display of, again, checks and balances and the way in which our state government was supposed to work. So the other aspect that I have, depending on the board or commission, is really working with our senators, as we not only get folks who self-nominate themselves, right? Anyone who applies through the appointments website or through our inbox, our email inbox, but also we get a lot of senators who know people in their home county that they'd like to recommend for any positions. So we really take that all into consideration. If I have somebody who I think is going to be a great fit, I will reach out to a senator on their behalf and ask for their help in moving their candidacy along. So there is a little bit of politicking in this role, but I get the incredible opportunity to work with our state senators on both sides of the aisle to make sure that we have incredible candidates that are not only nominated, but also confirmed. So that is the entire process. Patricia, I think I saw some questions roll up again, just to be considerate of everybody's time. I want to keep this to questions about the process and protocol, and not get in so much into the weeds about specific boards. And I welcome all of your questions. Thank you again for having me today.
Thank you, Sam. I don't get to see you face to face very often, but of course, I'm not at all surprised that the energy that you have brought to every job I've ever had the privilege of knowing you through is shining bright through the screen during our conversation this morning. And thank you for being honest, right? It is both simple and complicated, the process.
It is, and I truly think, and I think this is important to know, right? You always want to know who you have in the room, right? And I think for me, this is personal, right? Beyond being a great human being and, you know, committed to social justice as evident by my resume and my background. But for me, it's personal, right? My daughter is biracial. And so in this position, I see myself as an advocate. I, you know, get to use the privilege that I have to make sure that we have a lot of seats at the table and that the voices are heard, are diverse and are from all different walks of life. And it's very much important to me that when my daughter walks into a room when she's older, she sees herself represented, right? And it's not just about my daughter, it's all of our, you know, the children that are growing up in our state. I think it's really important that whether or not you are Black or Latinx or LGBT or Muslim or from the Middle East, you know, whatever your background might be. And one other thing I do want to say, I know that we have folks, many of the folks here are college educated, you know, or have advanced graduate degrees. But I think the other real component here and why I think it's important to have this conversation, and my hope is not that everyone on this call brings it back to their networks or knows somebody in their life, is we're not just looking for candidates who have your typical education. I think it's we want folks who are at the beginning of their career. We want folks who are at the end of their career. Everybody has a valid life experience, and we want that brought to our boards and commissions. So that's, you know, I just wanted to add that small little piece in there.
Thank you. And I think also one of the reasons why having this conversation was important for us is because we're trying to expand the spaces of influence where folks from our memberships can be part of important community policy decision-making processes. And to really, I think we have that shared vision, Sam, of folks sitting at sort of unexpected tables, right? That the assumption would be that if you were attending a conversation like this as part of either the African American Chamber or the state chamber, that you would want to talk specifically about boards around business development, which is important and that may be an interest for some of our colleagues. But also, though, we all live and work and play in the entire state of New Jersey. And the business acumen that we bring to our careers can be incredibly helpful and meaningful in rounding out perspectives on all of these other boards and commissions that exist.
And super important, I really want to mention here, so one thing that folks sometimes don't know, right, and this is about the education piece and the access piece, which is why I'm so thankful to be invited to speak with you today, is we have public member spots on all different boards, and a public member specifically has to be somebody who does not have any experience in the field, because what they do is they are a non-biased member of that commission who can kind of keep the commission in check. So for instance, our Board of Nursing, right, our state Board of Nursing, they have public member spots because sometimes when you're so in your field, you just have blinders, you know, and so it's those public members who are able to bring that insight. And we absolutely need folks who have that business acumen and those experiences to kind of maybe expand the vision and the thought process of these boards, you know. And yeah, I work in politics. I love government, but I have a lot of other interests. And so even for me, if I was considering a board position, which just everyone's clear, I'm not, right? I can't appoint myself to anything.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm the public member on the Board of Nursing, and you hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I was frozen for a second. And I'm sure I missed tons of your brilliance.
We're all good. Wasn't that brilliant? Let's go.
I don't
All right,
think
we
it
got questions.
Yeah, so we have some good questions. And I think I'd like to start with this one about reappointments. There are probably a number of us who have been appointed to certain boards and commissions, and we know that technically those terms expire. We also probably are all familiar with boards and commissions that have had the same folks on them for a very long time. So can you give us a little highlight of what the reappointment process should look like and what it does?
What it is, yeah. So in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, and it depends on the board. I'm going to be honest with you. If it is a direct appointment, reappointments are definitely easier. But if it's advice and consent, reappointments can be a bit harder. And here's why. So in a perfect world, your term would expire. You've been an incredible board member, and we're just going to re-up you, right? Awesome. But it doesn't work like that, mainly because, as we know, especially in the last, I mean, we saw this in the most previous election, the political landscape has entirely shifted. And so when you were appointed, and I mean you, General, when you were appointed, it might have been easier for you to get the advice and consent of your senators, and now not so much. So what do? Right? Do we take that risk? And meaning that we could renominate you and then you not go anywhere, which just doesn't look good on anybody. It doesn't look good on the administration, and it also doesn't look good on the candidate. Or do we let you stay serving in holdover? So when your term expires, it doesn't really expire. Your term only really truly expires if you resign of your own accord or if you die. That's it, right? Or if we appoint somebody in your position. Those are the only ways that you are taken off a board. And to be clear, you cannot be taken off a board before your term ends, right? So you will serve whatever term that you receive, and then you'll move forward. And the other part of this is this. So on a lot of our boards, which again, a lot of people don't know, the term actually follows the seat. It doesn't follow the person. So this is important because let's say on a board, people serve 5-year terms, right? And we have kept somebody served that 5-year term, and we've kept them in holdover for 4 years. And then we finally get somebody through where they are appointed. In theory, their term will only be 1 year. So we keep them in holdover so that they can continue to serve, because in a year, let's just talk about this potential theoretical person. It was so hard to get them through for whatever reason, whether it was political landscape, their background, or what have you. Do we risk that process again, or do we keep folks in holdover? So again, we have had folks in holdover for years, and they are serving passionately, but sometimes it's just a bit harder. And also, reality of the scope of our boards and commissions, we have 1,100 of them, many of which are advice and consent. So sometimes it just, and not to mention 1,100 of them, we have new ones that are introduced into our legislature every single year. The governor just signed off on one, the Asian American Pacific Islander Commission, right? So we get new commissions all of the time. So we're working to fill the new ones, working to make sure. Sometimes it's just great to know that we have qualified individuals in those positions that can continue to serve.
And we have a good question here, and I have a feeling I know how you'll answer it, but it's a question that should be brought into the room. As a transgender New Jerseyan, are there any particular appointments or commissions that they should be paying attention to?
All of them.
That's what I thought you'd say.
All of them.
Yep.
Right. So here's the thing I could say, right? And actually what's interesting is we definitely had like a trans equity task force or commission a couple of years ago that has completed what they needed to do. They submitted their report. So, I mean, who would I be to be like, oh yeah, you're trans, obviously you would go, no, all of them, your experience is valid. There are, I'm so excited because there are a couple of environmental boards, right? Where I've had folks be like, I'm really interested in this board. Great. Economics. As a transgendered New Jerseyan, there are a lot of things when it comes to money that, right, you have a different potentially view on, depending if you're male to female or female to male. So, or if you're non-binary, all of them. That's what you should apply to, all of them.
There's another question in the chat.
Oh no, you just give it a second because I can't hear you. I can hear you now.
There's another question asked directly of me in the chat box, but I think it's worth bringing into the room. And you may not have a direct question, but
Okay.
what's the average length of time? Are we talking about weeks or months or years for the appointment process?
What I love that you're like, you may not have an answer for this. And I love saying, I don't know what I don't know, right? So if I didn't have an answer, I would definitely come back to you with something. It depends on the type of appointment. So, one, if it's direct, those are a little bit quicker, especially if I have a vacancy, or if it's a board I'm trying to fill. It could take weeks. It can take months. It can take years. Yeah, I have a board. Actually, we just did the Plastics Advisory Council, which is going to help the state kind of think about different ways of eliminating single-use plastics. Right. I got that board when I first started 8 months ago. And I just appointed it last week. So that's a good example. It really can take any length. It's less on the person, more on the board. If that makes any sense.
Yes, I think that's helpful. And then I think there are a couple questions relating to partisan politics. And I think Ferlanda has a question as well. So I'll cover what's in the chat, and the people were asking, which I think are really good questions. What if I'm a registered independent voter? How does that? And what if I am what if my partisan politics are in the minority in my county? Do I still reach out to the majority who is elected for their consent on my application?
Yes, right. So I think it's about building. I think regardless of partisan politics, I think our senators, and obviously I cannot speak for them, but I would imagine our senators want to see qualified individuals in these roles. Now, in some counties, it's going to be a little bit easier than others. But yeah, I would start building those relationships, mainly because there could be the argument of let those senators get to know you as an individual and not your party affiliation. In regards to the independent question, party affiliation, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have requirements where there are some boards where no board can be more than half, one less than half of the board can't be, it all can't be one party. So yeah, we need eyes, right? We need ours, we need these. And there are sometimes where, personally, I like filling eye spots. So I think it's great because I do think I think folks who identify as independents are, independent thinkers, not to, play on the I word, but, and I think that regardless of what party you are, everybody should be applying. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're an independent. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you are non-binary. All of you have a voice. I think if that is the one thing I can get across today. It's, your voice is needed. Ferlanda, I think, and also all of these questions are great. I love this. Ferlanda, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I actually have two, and they're not related. The one is just the time commitment that generally is expected of someone who sits on the board, if you could answer that question. And then I have another one that's not related, so I'll ask after you answer.
Love it. Time commitment depends on the board. Some of them meet quarterly, some of them meet more regularly. I think there's a couple of boards that meet once a month. Now, so I can answer this question in the time of COVID, which is a lot of them are meeting via Zoom, which has been really great because past participants who maybe lost a little bit of engagement have actually been able to be more engaged because they, during the pandemic, were looking for something to do, right? They were like, yes, let me jump on this board meeting. I also think that depending on the caliber of your expertise, sometimes it's just easier, if you don't have to come down to Trenton for a meeting, it's a bit easier to engage. Typically board meetings, depending, last between 3 and 5 hours. Now, when I say 5 hours, those are the ones that are meeting probably quarterly, maybe on a Saturday for half of the day. Those are a lot of the medical board examiner positions because they have a lot to go through. But regularly, I think it's an hour and a half to 3 hours, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter. The other thing I will mention here is I am advocating for us to keep a Zoom protocol, because I do think that that will allow accessibility to more New Jerseyans. And I think that that is a direction that I cannot, obviously, again, I can't speak for the administration, but that is something that I'm advocating for.
Great. And then the other question I have relates to diversity. So I think webinars like this is great for diversifying the pool of applicants, right? Because we've now learned that it's actually pretty simple to apply for a board position. So I think that that's great for the people who are here today, that they've gotten that awakening. My question is, though, is what's being done on the selection side, not the advice and consent, because you've made that clear that there is some politics that, you know, are involved in that, and your relationship with your senator has a lot to do with how far you go on that side. But for the direct appointments, do you know what is being done to, I mean, I don't want to use the word affirmative action, but, you know,
Understand what you mean.
on the selection side?
Yep. I love that question, and I love that you asked it, because you're absolutely right, right? The pool, how do we move that? So first, I think you need to have an appointments director who is committed to equity. You have that. Now, I understand that I'm obviously not going to be in this role forever. However, it is something that I am setting as a standard for the policy and procedure of this office, and have the full backing of the administration. If I didn't, we're all friends here, so I'll share. There have been times where there have been certain departments that'll send me a list, and they are all white, all middle-aged, all mostly educated, and I have returned the list. And I'll say, if we're going to be about it, we're going to be about it. And I have the full backing of this administration to do that. And when folks say, well, there's no one in this industry that's, you know, we don't have, you know, high caliber candidates. And that's when I usually say, oh, you don't? Well, then I'll find some. And I do, you know, so it's utilizing the network. And it's also recognizing my role in this work and the dedication that I have to diversity. And I do think there's a piece here. We have talked about the advice and consent process, but I also think that actually, I want to backtrack. I'm able to have those conversations because I have the full backing of the administration. So, and I bring that up to say, even when I am not in this role, beyond all of the work that I've done to make sure that that is part of the policy and procedure, all the way up, you know, regardless of it's my boss, who's the deputy chief of IGA, Tim Hillman, chief of staff, George Helmy, or Gov himself, are committed to diversity and equity in our boards and commissions. So I'm able to do this work because I have their full support. It's not, I think previously, whether it be previous administrations, it has been a lot harder, but when you have the full support of your entire team, it's remarkably more easy. The other piece here I do want to say is, yes, the advice and consent process is challenging, but I would also bring it to another level of saying, I would look at the diversity and equity of your state legislature and start looking at maybe why some of these qualified candidates, whether it is a board and commission, whether it's a prosecutor, or whether it's a judge, are not moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
I have another question. This isn't from the chat box, but I think it's a question for all of us to consider in general. And you kind of teed it up well, Sam, by talking about taking a look at the legislature. You know, you mentioned that we currently have 1,100 boards and commissions, and then there are new ones being added all the time. And I'm wondering if there is a process by which boards or commissions that have been created as a piece of a component of a bill that's been passed and signed into law, are they reevaluated over time? And who does that reevaluation to determine whether or not that board or commission is still necessary, valid, or living up to the intent of that sponsored legislation to begin with?
Yep, that is a great question. I don't have an answer for you. And it is one that I have asked, because we do, and I obviously, like, I have the information, you know, as to, we have inactivated boards before, or we've created new boards, and that because of those new boards that kind of either pool folks together, different groups, we've terminated other boards. It also depends, because boards and commissions are not just created legislatively, they can also be created through executive order. So That is a great question. And I don't know who does that work, but I have been trying to figure it out for quite some time. So when I have an answer, I will be happy to share it with you.
Of course you will. And I think the reason why I share that is because, I have the privilege of sitting on different boards and task forces. And I think depending on that body of folks who sit at the table, there's a different level of commitment to either live up to the intention of its creation. So, I sit on a newly created advisory board for the Department of Corrections Office of the Ombudsman. And we are very interested, because we are new, in making sure we live up to the principles of the Dignity Act that was passed into law last year to ensure that the rights of incarcerated individuals are being protected and secured. And then there are actually a couple of my colleagues on the call today who I sit on the Governor's Advisory Council Against Sexual Violence, which was created by executive order many years ago. And I think one of the creative things that I would call all of us in the room to consider is, if you sit on a board or a commission that perhaps has been in existence for a while, there is an opportunity to perhaps touch base either with the front office or with the sponsoring legislator, if that's how that commission or board was created, to see what that body could be doing now in 2021 to meet the original vision. That there, to your point, government has a lot of limitations around staffing structure, or even sort of like tentacles on the ground all the time. But if you're on a board or a commission and you have an opportunity to redirect the direction that it's going based off of the times or the needs that the communities are expressing, that's an opportunity, I think, to really help New Jersey move forward. That
Absolutely.
Something that was created 10 years ago may need to take on a different life form now.
And I would actually recommend, I would take it one step further. So I would actually make the recommendation to get in touch with the front office, mainly because we're going to send you somewhere else. A lot of our boards and commissions, unless you are in but not of, are in a department. So I would get in touch with the contact person who oversees the board to talk with them to begin those conversations. That's going to be the best place to start.
And then one more question, which I think is a good one. Are there any limits to the number of boards or commissions that someone could serve on?
Okay, real talk, no. But I would also think about your bandwidth for serving, right? I think we want to make sure that folks aren't overcommitted, and we also want to make sure that we are allowing other qualified candidates to serve as well. So I don't think somebody serving on 15 boards, if you have the time for that, that sounds incredible. I wish I had the time for that. But I also think that, if we could pare it down to maybe 2 or 3 at the max, I would say that.
Thank you. Belinda, is there anything else that you'd like to bring into the room before we wrap up?
I do have a question related to conflicts of interest. So is that, when should an applicant concern him or herself with applying for a board based on their other activities that might prove to be problematic because there may be a conflict?
So here's the first thing. One is try the best you can to avoid conflicts of interest, right? Because mainly you're going to have to recuse yourself from any situation. Part of the vet that we do, depending on where the board lies, is we reach out to, before we appoint anyone, we do our due diligence, right? So we are going to check in to make sure that, one, this person is qualified to serve on the board, in that if it's professional engineers and land surveyors, just throwing it out there, that they're qualified to serve in the position that they are serving in, because obviously we can't just appoint somebody in an engineer spot who's never done that work, right? There are certain parameters. So that's the first thing, is making sure that they're qualified, but also they'll make sure that there are no conflicts of interest. So we send it out to our connect at the department, and they let us know if there's a conflict of interest. Now, sometimes, I'm trying to think. So there's the Center for Hispanic Policy and Research Development. And the only reason I'm pausing is because half the time I say policy and research development, and the other half I say research and policy development, but it's policy and research development, where we've had folks who have been able to serve, but would have to recuse themselves out of too much of the actual substance of the board, that it just wasn't worth it. So in theory, yes, they could serve, but they would be recusing themselves, that it just didn't make it worth it. So you are your own best advocate, and also your experience and what your conflicts would be far better than we do. So just take that consideration. Help me out a little bit. Help me help you. That's what I like to say.
Thank
Great.
you.
Of course.
2 more questions.
Please.
Someone private messaged and asked approximately how many boards or commissions that there were. I responded and said roughly 1,100.
Yep.
And then the next question is way over my pay grade, Sam. Approximately how many of those positions are open right now?
I wish I knew. That's the truth of it. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have, unfortunately, and we're working through this. So that was, again, and Patricia knows this about me. I am a checkbox kind of girl. I love a task list, right? I love a task list. I love checking it off. It makes my life complete. One of the first things when I started here was figuring out, how do we make this better? Because my whole want in this world is to make things more accessible, right? Especially for folks who have different socioeconomic backgrounds, right? That's why we do these kind of town halls. So I was really excited when Patricia reached out to me to say, would you be interested in doing this? We did about 8 of them in October to make sure that we are really getting the word out. I think we're going to continue that as once the holidays are over, maybe once a month, have these types of appointment town halls so people can keep getting educated. But one of the other things was finding a software, which we are so close to procuring. It's, government and things take time, where we're going to be able to kind of do our due diligence, work with the departments, and really figure out and quantitatively know how many are vacant. Also, I did see a question pop up about paid, and I think that actually parlays into this. How many are paid? Not many. Our tax boards are, which are a little bit more difficult to get on. I'm going to be honest, and a lot of the boards that everybody wants to get on, right? Whether it's CRDA or New Jersey, or the casino commission, not many are paid. BPU, a couple of more of the higher profile boards are. And for that, in true transparency, you do need to have a little bit more of a higher profile and better the best relationships with your senators, because those are paid positions.
All right, so we are just up to the hour. There are a couple more questions that floated in, but I want to assure everyone that we've recorded this session, and I will send out the link. And we will also send out a follow-up email that includes the link to the website, so you can take a look. Again, be patient. The boards and commission openings are not always up to date, but yay for that procurement process moving forward, Sam.
Oh my gosh, your mouth to God's ears, please. I would love it.
Also, I want to just let everyone know that if you have a colleague or a friend who couldn't be with us this morning, true to Sam's commitment to being accessible, we're holding a repeat of this conversation tonight live at 6 p.m. We have about 45 folks registered for that, so we have room to take in more. So if you want to join us again, because we're just all so much fun, feel free to register and join us at 6 p.m. or send the registration links over to some of your friends and colleagues. And then also, I just want to make a plug, sort of aligned, well, not sort of, but aligned with our commitment to expanding diversity on boards is our commitment to ensuring that our nonprofit colleagues have access to diverse, qualified professionals to serve in some of the most important roles that are advancing priorities in our communities. And so on Friday, December 17th at 9 a.m., we'll be holding a webinar with the Center for Nonprofits, where we'll be talking about board diversity. And so nonprofit board diversity. And so when we say board diversity, we're really talking about big B, big D. There are lots of spaces where our spheres of influence can be helpful and meaningful and move New Jersey forward. So I will send out the registration link for that conversation as well. For Landa, I'm so incredibly thankful for the partnership that we have with the African American Chamber and for all that you all do day in and day out to move New Jersey forward. Sam, thank you for your time and all that you're doing in your new role, which does not seem new at all. You're so expertly skilled at talking about all of this. And thank you, all of you, for joining us here this morning, spending some time with us. Thank you for the service that you are going to do moving forward as you move through the process of joining a border commission in New Jersey. And we'll see you all very soon. If we aren't in touch before the end of the year, if I don't see you before the end of the year, have a wonderful and safe holiday season, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.